Hey, it's Nancy. Before we begin today, I just wanted to let you know that you can listen to Crime Beat early and ad-free on Amazon Music, included with Prime. On the evening of February 17, 2000, the owner of a pizza shop in southeast Calgary turned the locks on his doors a bit early. The shop wasn't closed, but it was takeout and delivery only. And at night, when it was dark outside, he felt safer knowing he was in charge of who was allowed in. He stood at the front counter near the cash register and waited for calls to come in. But there wouldn't be any more orders that night. At around 9:40 p.m., a man completely soaked in blood staggered by the window. The pizza shop owner watched in terror as the badly injured man reached for his door on the other side of the glass.
All covered in blood, that's all I see. Blood was dripping actually from his head, right on forehead and all over his face. It was literally covered in blood.
I'm Nancy Hixt, a senior crime reporter for Global News. Today, on Crime Beat, I share details of what happened and how this savage attack became linked to a homicide investigation that would unfold hours later, just a few blocks away. This is the conclusion of The Night Shift. In early 2000, a young man who recently immigrated to Canada from Lebanon had a lot on his plate as he worked to establish a life for his family. His days were full. He worked a 9-to-5 at an auto body shop, and in the evenings he took English as a second language classes. He had an unexpected hiccup when he broke his hand and was unable to work. That pushed him to focus on his studies. And on February 17th, after class, he picked up his mail and stopped at his local bank. That cold winter evening, he only had $30 in his wallet and was planning to withdraw some cash and pay a bill. He pulled up to his bank and at about 9 p.m. parked his red Toyota Corolla out front and went inside the lobby where the ATM was located. With one hand in a cast, he put his gas bill in his mouth to free up his good hand to grab an envelope. He took out his wallet from his back pants pocket, slid out the bank card, and inserted it into the bank machine. The man keyed in his PIN and punched in the amount of the gas bill. But realizing he had made an error, he canceled the entire transaction. He was about to start the whole process from scratch when his world went dark. Hours later, he woke up in a hospital bed. Here's Calgary Police Deputy Chief Cliff O'Brien.
On February 17th of 2000, the Calgary Police Service received a phone call. There had been an individual from our community that had been at Bank of Montreal ATM and had been doing some banking transactions. It's about 9:30 at night. And as the community member is doing his transaction, somebody comes up from behind and begins assaulting him with what turns out to be a hammer and strikes him multiple times.
A surprising number of people were in the area when this all unfolded. One woman was walking home from work when the two men in the lobby of the bank caught her attention. She noticed one was standing at one of the bank machines, but the other man was lying on the floor. She told herself that it must be someone down on their luck, needing to warm up in the lobby. People do that all the time at this location. But that's when she noticed the man on the ground trying to get up, only to be knocked back down by the man at the ATM. She said he seemed defenseless. He kept trying to stand up, only to be violently hit again and again. She watched the attacker as he left the bank and got into a small red car before he sped off southbound through several parking lots. The woman quickly walked home and phoned the police, but she said officers didn't come. Instead, they told her to write up an incident report and someone would pick it up the next morning. At the same time, a husband and wife were driving home from an evening of bowling when they passed the Bank of Montreal. From the passenger window, the wife noticed a woman standing on the sidewalk staring into the bank. She followed her gaze, and that's when she noticed a person on the floor of the bank. From the vehicle, it was hard to make out any other details, and before long, they had passed the bank altogether. But something about the situation didn't feel right, so she asked her husband to turn back. He drove around the block as quickly as he could, but it took several minutes. And when they finally made it back, the man was off the floor and leaning on the bank machine, so the couple went home. They wouldn't piece together and share what they had seen until a few nights later. That's when police officers knocked on neighborhood doors to ask about an incident at the nearby subway. At the same time as the couple was driving home that night, another witness was at a restaurant on 17th Avenue Southeast. During dinner, he excused himself to go to a nearby bank machine a short distance away. There was no one inside, so he quickly used one of the machines and made his transaction. He grabbed his money and the receipt, which he crumpled up and tossed into the garbage. That's when he noticed a red glow on the ATM's keypad. He immediately recognized it as blood, and as he looked around, he saw more was dripping over the ledge. He followed the trail to the door and noticed the handle was also smeared with blood. Careful not to touch anything, the man pushed the door open with his foot as he left. He rushed back to the restaurant to call the police. Meanwhile, the badly injured, blood-soaked victim had staggered to a nearby pizza shop looking for help. The man tried the door, but it didn't open. Inside, the terrified business owner watched as he tried to get in. But when the door didn't immediately open, the man kept trudging forward. He made it another 200 feet when he finally caught the attention of an employee of the nearby gas station. That worker saw the man struggling to walk, and he was holding his hand to his head. It was obvious he was in pain. At the edge of the gas station parking lot, the light shone on him, showing he was covered in blood. The attendant ran outside and brought him into the washroom, where he tried to clean him up, but he could see the injuries were severe. There were several deep cuts on his head, and he seemed disoriented. The man asked the gas attendant where he was and if he could call his brother. Instead, the employee called for help. Within minutes, an ambulance arrived. On the way to the hospital, paramedics said he was incoherent and went in and out of consciousness. Major crimes investigators were called in, including Staff Sergeant John Gigon, who at that time was a detective.
Well, my partner and I got called in around midnight of the 17th, so early 18th of February 2000. We were told that there was what we call a roll job, so a person had been a personal robbery, but the victim had been very severely beaten and was in life-threatening condition at the moment. That's initially what we discovered, of course. A little later on, we discovered just how badly beaten he was after we watched the video and followed his blood trail, actually.
Investigators immediately noticed surveillance cameras at the bank and rushed to get access to CCTV. In the meantime, the witnesses were interviewed and the Forensic Crime Scenes Unit took photographs and gathered evidence. Staff Sergeant John Gigon said they were relieved to learn that a few hours later, the victim miraculously regained consciousness in the hospital.
Around 4 o'clock in the morning, my partner and I attended the hospital. He couldn't recollect anything about the incident at all. He remembers running some errands prior to and then going to the bank to take some money out for groceries and pay some bills. And that last he remembers. Didn't remember getting hit, didn't remember stumbling along 17th Avenue, nothing like that.
Later that day, the victim underwent surgery to mitigate the damage caused by multiple depressed skull fractures that were putting pressure on his brain. By then, officers were able to view CCTV from the bank and saw that his injuries were the result of repeated blows to the head with a hammer.
It was amazing. We thought, we're watching a homicide. It was amazing that he pulled through. We reckon that had he not escaped the vestibule at that point and got out into the public, he probably would have perished, yes.
Investigators learned that the victim's wallet, which only had about $30 inside, was stolen, and his red Toyota Corolla was also missing.
Just the sheer brutality of it. There really was no reason to strike a person in the back of the head. Simply brandishing it and demanding money would have been sufficient.
The violence had been horrific for just a $30 payoff. However, the attacker left behind evidence that couldn't be disputed. His face had been captured on video.
He had a very unique look about him. And if you were a cop in Forest Lawn in the late 90s and early 2000s, you knew exactly who he was. I call him a opportunistic career criminal, I suppose. His big thing was break-and-enters. Typically commercial break-and-enters. He'd done a couple of residential ones, stealing cars, a lot of car thefts, simple drug possessions, being intoxicated in a public place, stuff like that. But just a career guy that everybody knew.
Investigators had identified a person of interest and now had the arduous task of finding him. Meanwhile, just a few blocks away, homicide detectives were at the scene of a murder. They were struggling to come up with a suspect for the murder of Tara McDonald. You'll recall that at about 11 p.m., an hour and a half after the incident at the ATM, Tara had been attacked while working at a Subway sandwich shop. Deputy Chief Cliff O'Brien said both victims had been repeatedly hit in the head and robbed.
When you have two violent crimes like that in close proximity, that's a flag, and really the ATM robbery is still being actively investigated and being pursued. So it didn't take long for the investigators to figure out there might be a link here. It is possible that's the same offender that committed the ATM robbery a few hours earlier and then traveled to the Subway and committed another robbery, except this time also committed homicide.
As police investigated the attack at the ATM and the murder at the sandwich shop, they recovered the first victim's car on a residential road just a few blocks from the bank and seized it for a full forensic examination. Then, in an effort to generate tips to help push the murder investigation forward, detectives decided to use a controversial strategy. It wasn't illegal, but it definitely raises some ethical questions. I've covered a lot of crime stories and investigative techniques designed to catch criminals over the years, and I consider this one to be pretty problematic. Let me explain. Police often use holdback information and other unique strategies to catch criminals. However, you don't often see investigators providing false information, essentially lying to the public. You'll recall from previous episodes of Crime Beat that I often share how investigators use witness accounts to create composite sketches. But in this case, there were no eyewitnesses to the attack in the sandwich shop. So investigators used CCTV from the bank since they believed the attacks had been at the hands of the same well-known offender. They pulled a previous mugshot and then got an officer to create a drawing of that person. The sketch was then released to the media as a person of interest in relation to both crimes. Looking back at the Global News archives, it was reported that police said there were witnesses who had come forward, which led to the sketch. For this episode, I verified that the sketch actually came from the CCTV image and a mugshot, and not a real-life witness. If this situation unfolded today, Deputy Chief O'Brien said CPS wouldn't have handled the situation the same way. More likely, they would simply release it and say it was a sketch of someone they believed had information about the crime. In any case, it worked, and a Calgary police inspector provided an update to the media within hours of the release of the drawing.
We've had hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of tips in from the public. I just talked to the Crime Stoppers people, and their lines are still jammed. So it's really heartening to see this level of concern from the citizens of Calgary. They're doing everything they can to help us with this.
Deputy Chief Cliff O'Brien said, because of that sketch, investigators were able to confirm the same man was wanted for both crimes.
You know, sometimes we put out sketches and we might get 1 or 2 tips. In this case, we had well over 60 tips.
Police identified the suspect as Trevor Stang, and he quickly became one of Calgary's most wanted. It was a significant break, and Tara McDonald's mother responded by sending a message to the alleged killer through a local newspaper. On the front page of the Calgary Sun, she told Stang to give up.
Back in those days prior to social media, newspapers were a significant way of communication, as was the traditional news. And so I don't think there's anybody in the city that didn't know what had happened and that we have an innocent 25-year-old woman that's murdered while working. That shouldn't happen in our city. And so when the family comes forward and when the victim's mom comes forward and basically pleads for the killer to turn himself in, that was pretty powerful.
By then, investigators had also managed to track Stang down, and he was put under 24-hour surveillance.
So we didn't have anything significant to charge him when it comes to the murder. Again, it's all speculation. He's our suspect, but it's because of the MO, it's because of the location, but that's not good enough to arrest somebody. There is a lot going on, and the investigators are trying to balance the investigation as well as the risk of keeping this person in our community and not locked up.
That all changed when covert officers watched Stang head towards the same busy area where both violent crimes had taken place. They felt the risk was too high and made their move.
At 5:30 in the morning, our surveillance units indicate that Stang is walking by himself on a sidewalk on 17th Avenue, and that's our opportunity. There's nobody else around. There's very few pedestrians, very few cars. That was our opportunity to make the arrest, and the detectives themselves arrested him.
On February 24th, 2000, 1 week after both violent attacks, Trevor Stang was taken into custody.
He's transported to the arrest processing unit, and not only is he photographed, but also we seized the clothing that he was wearing, and ultimately we sent that clothing up to the crime lab for analysis.
However, Trevor Stang was only charged in connection with the attack and robbery at the ATM. You have to remember, the only real evidence police had connecting him to the murder were from tips to Crime Stoppers following the release of the sketch. But getting him off the streets was a big deal. Not only did it calm a concerned community, but it also allowed police to push forward with several other investigative strategies. And that is when key evidence in the homicide was finally uncovered. You'll recall police used the canine unit to track down and recover coins that investigators presumed had fallen out of the cash box as the offender fled the sandwich shop. But officers still hadn't located other key evidence, like the stolen cash drawer, or, more importantly, the murder weapon. So they expanded their search on the original track and carefully mapped out each location. The Subway sandwich shop was located on 17th Avenue Southeast, just under 1.5 kilometers directly east of the Bank of Montreal. The ATM attack victim's car was found about 650 meters south of the subway in Forest Lawn. Deputy Chief Cliff O'Brien said officers did another pass of the entire area, including several parks and green spaces.
One of the things that we did is, as we continued to get more and more information, is that we did another grid search. And we, as we often do here in this community, we have great people, and we use volunteers to come in. Sometimes we use search and rescue individuals, or we'll use people that are, that specialize in metal detection and whatnot. So it was a fairly significant search that we were involved in.
Members of the Calgary Metal Detectors Club focused their search on a 30-acre-wide vacant lot that was for lease to potential developers. It was located outside of the main search zone and east of Forest Lawn. It may sound easy, but it was a big area, and remember, it was in the dead of winter. They walked up and down through ankle-deep snow, scanning their devices back and forth over the ground. One of the volunteers told a Global News reporter that his machine could detect an item as small as the back of an earring, up to 3 inches underground if there was a clear signal. At the same time, the specialized canine unit was scouring the area a few blocks away, where they had picked up the scent of the coins on the night of the murder.
As part of that grid search, we were able to locate a plastic bag that was near a large tree. And when the canine handler opened up the bag, they were able to see some pieces of evidence that became very, very crucial for us. We found some black pieces of plastic. We also found what looked like a metal cash drawer, which was a piece that we were looking for that was missing. And we also found that some of the items had been duct taped and they were inside a plastic bag. All of the exhibits were properly taken care of and they were sent for fingerprinting. And sometimes this happens, but unfortunately we weren't able to get any further forensics from those pieces of evidence that we found.
With the murder weapon still missing, officers went to each of Trevor Stang's known hangouts.
The investigators realized that where Stang's sister's house is and where Stang has been staying multiple times is just a short walk from where the subway homicide took place.
Trevor Stang's sister, Carol, lived in Forest Lawn, about 1.2 kilometers south of the sandwich shop, and just a few hundred meters from where the bank victim's car was located.
On February 26th at 11 p.m., investigators go to the sister's residence with a search warrant, and we were able to talk to the sister and obviously search the residence for some things that we were looking for.
As officers searched her home, Carol agreed to speak with detectives at Calgary Police Headquarters.
As part of that interview, she was shown the video of the ATM robbery, and she broke down. It was pretty clear that she knew who the offender was, and again, it's a very violent attack. And she decided at that point that she wanted to speak to police and tell what happened. So she talked about how earlier in the day that Stang had indicated that he needed to go get some drugs. He left for a period of time. When he came back, he had $30 cash. He had some vehicle that had not been seen before.
That vehicle had been a small red car, a Toyota Corolla.
As investigators start piecing this together and putting it together, they realize that the timeline seems to fit with the ATM robbery, where $30 were stolen from the victim, and the vehicle matches the vehicle that was stolen from him. She also talks about her boyfriend being at the house at the same time. So when Stang came back, it was her brother, and her boyfriend, and they all did drugs together. Throughout this time, Stang is showing up with some money or drugs, or he has money, he leaves, gets drugs, comes back, they smoke it, he then leaves again. So there's this coming and going of Stang throughout that time. She ultimately provided us with a sworn statement, and she talked about not only what Stang had told her, what she saw, but also her involvement in doing their best to destroy evidence. And so she was very much involved in this.
Carol Stang told police that around 10:30 p.m. on that cold Thursday night in February of 2000, after the ATM attack, but before the murder, her brother Trevor left her house to get more money and more drugs. She told police he returned about an hour later carrying a steel box. Carol recalled that at the time, they were all solely focused on getting more cocaine, so neither she nor her boyfriend Mario asked questions about the box or where he got it from.
And the three of them, Stang, his sister, and her boyfriend, all are attempting to gain access to this box. One of the things that she tells investigators is that when they did get access to the box, there was a couple $100s in there, but they also noticed that there was pieces of paper that had Subway on it and the Subway logo on those pieces of paper. Stang's sister indicates that she knew that the box came from Subway because of the pieces of paper that were in there, but she just assumed that it was a theft. And so they ended up doing some more drugs that night. And it wasn't until the next morning when it really broke on the news that she saw that there had been a homicide at the Subway. And that's when she was able to piece things together and realize that her brother very, very likely committed a homicide. She indicated to us that she, as she was panicking and trying to clean some of these items, that she actually got rid of them, so that she took them out of the house and got rid of them, but that she would be willing to show us where they were.
I was able to obtain video of that trip from court. On a dark and snowy morning in February, 10 days after the attack, Carol Stang led investigators to several locations where she said she had disposed of key evidence. It was filmed by a police officer as the lead homicide detective narrated what he was seeing.
This is Sunday, February the 27th. It's 3:30 a.m. And this is Carol Stang. Carol, I'm John Dukes. Acknowledge that you're still under oath. You're providing you with a KGB statement. Now you've offered to take me from your house and show me where some items were stashed?
Yes.
Okay, and this is all of your own free will?
Yes.
Carol Stang then took the detective to a park south of the sandwich shop, halfway between where the stolen car was recovered and her house. She told him that once she learned about the homicide, she and her boyfriend cleaned the stolen cash drawer, then dumped it near a tree, which was the exact spot where the canine unit had located it just hours earlier. Next, Carol took them directly south of her house, about 250 meters.
From here, you told me there's some other items placed. Now where would they be at?
Behind those blue condos,
Okay.
there's railroad tracks.
Okay.
She got the detective to crawl through a hole in a fence between the housing complex and the railway tracks. She pointed to a spot just a few feet from the tracks.
Now what's over there?
Ballpeen hammer.
Did you catch that? In the video, she showed the officers a spot covered in snow, but a closer look revealed the end of some sort of object that was poking out. Carol told the detective it was a ball-peen hammer, and what was poking out of the snow was the handle. It was a massive development in the case, and Deputy Chief Cliff O'Brien said they knew it was legit because the murder weapon had never been made public.
As you know, holdback is very crucial to an investigation, and it's a significant piece of evidence that, or information that only the killer and the police investigators would know. And so in this particular case, the victim's injuries and the fact that we believe that a ball-peen hammer had been used on the ATM victim as well as Tara, that was a piece of holdback that we had. So one of the things that Stang's sister told us is that she found a ball-peen hammer in the residence. She believed that it was the homicide weapon, and in fact had taken steps to clean that particular hammer. Again, that was holdback information that we hadn't told anybody.
Carol Stang told police she had scrubbed the hammer with a really strong household cleaner. The hammerhead had two ends, one flat and one round, or ball-shaped, which gives the tool its name, ball peen. It's typically used for metalwork versus a carpentry or claw hammer that has a flat surface on one end and a tool to remove nails on the other. A forensic examination confirmed the ball peen hammer recovered from the snow had been scrubbed clean of all potential blood or DNA evidence.
From the investigator's perspective, there's no doubt that what she's telling us is the truth. And as we continue with the search of her residence, we're starting to find pieces of evidence that just corroborate what she just said.
Back at her house, forensic crime scenes investigators found the sponge Carol said she used to clean the hammer, along with cleaning supplies and other evidence that connected her brother to the crimes.
We're able to find a ball cap that Stang had been wearing in the video at the ATM robbery that is located in his sister's house. We're able to locate duct tape, and the duct tape matches the duct tape that was found in that white bag that had parts of a cash register. It looked like duct tape together. So even the search warrant that we're doing is corroborating all the information we have.
I should note that one of the other items located in Carol's house was a copy of the newspaper with a photo of Tara and her mother on the front page, along with the headline, "Give Up." As the investigation continued, police shifted their focus to Carol's boyfriend, Mario, who she said had been there the night her brother came and went, each time with more money and drugs. Carol was given a chance to speak with Mario, and she encouraged him to cooperate with investigators. Mario agreed to take police to the locations, and you'll hear one of the investigators, Detective Zupak, in that recording.
Mario, I want you to understand that we're still under the KGB statement oath, okay? You're still required to tell us the truth.
Mario walked south of Carol's house down the street to the same hole in the fence near the railway tracks, where he pointed to an area where the other detectives had already recovered the hammer. From there, they walked north to the same park Carol had taken officers to earlier and pointed to where he said they had dumped the stolen cash box.
Okay, what are we looking at here?
Okay, point to it again, Mario.
What is it gone? You say it's gone?
Yeah.
Okay.
It looks like. Yeah, this piece here, that's part of the register.
Deputy Chief Cliff O'Brien said both Carol and Mario corroborated each other's accounts. So police now had a mountain of evidence against Trevor Stang for both the attack at the bank and the murder of Tara McDonald.
So we have an ATM robbery with a hammer, where somebody is essentially bludgeoned almost to death. We have video of that, and we have still pictures, and Stang is identified as that individual. A few hours later, we have somebody with a similar MO that kills Tara McDonald and steals a cash register. We have coins and pieces of the cash register along a route towards his sister's house. We have Stang's sister that says that he had come back several times that night, one with $30, which is the same amount of money as the ATM robbery, but also comes back with a cash register that has Subway pieces of paper, receipts or whatnot in it. There's a significant amount of evidence that is piling up. We then have Stang's sister talk about a murder weapon that we haven't told anybody is even a murder weapon, but she has led us to evidence that had been cleaned and that had been ditched, including a ball-peen hammer, which became what we believe to be the murder weapon.
Exactly 2 weeks after her death, police were able to lay charges for Tara McDonald's murder.
On March 2nd, 2000, Investigators went to see Stang at the Calgary Remand Center and informed them that he was going to be charged with Tara McDonald's murder. And so he was charged with first-degree murder.
There would be 2 separate trials, both prosecuted by Jonathan Hack. He worked as a prosecutor in Alberta for over 30 years and has since obtained a PhD and teaches full-time at a law school overseas. Hack told me the theory he presented to the court was the same for both cases, in which a prolific offender's desire for money and drugs fueled a violent crime spree that left one man with a brain injury and a young woman dead.
I've prosecuted lots of murders and lots of other crimes that have resulted in far too many deaths. And what stood out about this case is the randomness of some violent crime where it isn't a person you have a grudge against. It isn't someone who has wronged you. It is just someone who is a means to an end. And so this case really struck me as indicating how random things can be in our lives. So after the ATM robbery, where he gets $30 from the victim's wallet and the car, he goes back to his sister's place, tells them that he has this car, which they ask him to park somewhere else, and he's got $30. So he then goes out to buy some crack cocaine, comes back, $30 of crack cocaine doesn't last long. They use up the crack cocaine. Then he has the brilliant idea of going to get more money to buy more crack cocaine. That's where Tara McDonald came in.
In the spring of 2001, just over a year after both crimes, Trevor Stang faced his first trial. This one in front of a judge alone for the attack at the Bank of Montreal. At the onset, he pleaded guilty to the robbery.
A key forensic finding in this case came from the jeans that Trevor Stang was wearing when he was arrested. Those jeans had blood on them, and through DNA testing, that was linked not to Tara McDonald, but to the ATM robbery victim. And so that also helped to link his involvement in the spree that occurred that evening.
But Stang denied that he tried to kill the ATM victim. He pleaded not guilty to attempted murder.
Did you know that attempted murder is one of the hardest offenses in the criminal code to prove? It's harder to prove than murder. Because for murder, you can either prove intent to kill, or what we usually rely on is the intent to cause bodily harm and being reckless as to whether or not death ensues. But for attempted murder, the only intent that works is intent to kill. So the purpose of the trial was to determine whether his crime of violence was a crime of general intent, aggravated assault, or a crime of specific intent, attempted murder. At the end of the trial, he was found guilty of aggravated assault, but was acquitted of attempted murder. And so the judge was not satisfied that when he struck the victim, he intended to kill him.
In handing down a 10-year prison term, the judge noted Stang made no expression of remorse. Stang later appealed that sentence, citing an error on the part of the trial judge, given he had entered a guilty plea to robbery. But the Alberta Court of Appeal found that the guilty plea was not a mitigating factor because it wasn't seen as early, but it was instead made at the start of the trial, when it was clear the evidence against him was overwhelming. The appeal was dismissed. Just a few months after the first trial, in the fall of 2001, Trevor Stang faced a jury in his second trial. This time, he was accused of the first-degree murder of Tara McDonald.
The Subway sandwich shop murder was a crime of convenience. Tara McDonald was a young woman working at the Subway sandwich shop, working by herself at night. She wasn't hanging around with the wrong people. She wasn't doing bad things. She was just doing her job. And that's the kind of murder that people are more afraid of, where you're just doing your life. You're just doing things in life, and you happen to be the chosen victim. And little did she know, but Trevor Stang was out looking to make some quick cash to buy some crack cocaine. He went into the Subway sandwich shop. She was working alone. There were no customers. He went up to her and with a 4-pound hammer struck her on the back of the head, collapsing her skull, and then stole the cash register. He wasn't smart enough to open the cash register, so he actually stole the entire cash register and then ran away with it.
Deb Dorr, Tara's mother, went to court every day. She said she needed to see the evidence that had been gathered against her daughter's killer. Deputy Chief Cliff O'Brien said that along with the admissions from Stang's own sister and her boyfriend, the jury heard confessions Stang had made while in custody awaiting trial.
So one of the things that Stang was doing while he was in remand was he was calling people and having conversations with them about what he did and essentially was making confessions to them.
Those calls were recorded, including this one he made to his mother.
My charges are attempted murder, aggravated assault, robbery, and I'm wanted for questioning on that Tara McDonald murder.
Oh, yeah.
While in custody, Stang also reached out to several friends. And again, those calls were recorded.
Apparently I am guilty for that woman's death. My sister come home and she goes, she's dead. I bawled. They're saying what, you used a hammer or something? Yeah, that's what they're saying. That's what I did use. What did you use, if anything, on Tara? Yeah. I think she was mopping or something, like she just finished mopping or something like that.
In one conversation, he complained about his sister's cooperation with police.
Now I had my own family, let me out, and now I'm being charged with first-degree murder. My charges would have been manslaughter charges, not first-degree murder, if she would have kept her mouth shut.
Jonathan Hack said the wiretap evidence played a key role in this case.
His calls from the remand center made it very clear that he was the killer. So his remand center calls alone probably would have put him in the frame for conviction. But his sister's evidence really gave us the context for the robbery, for coming home with the cash drawer, for getting rid of the evidence, for telling him to watch the news, that sort of thing.
But while the evidence against him was overwhelming, Trevor Stang refused to admit to the murder.
The defense was that this was a manslaughter. The argument before the jury was that there was no intent to kill, no intent to cause bodily harm that would rise to the level of murder. This was an unintentional killing, a robbery gone bad. And that was the logical argument for the defense to make to the jury.
After hearing nearly 3 weeks of evidence, the jury deliberated for just 5 hours.
The jury did not convict of first-degree murder, and it was absolutely open to them to do what they did. They convicted him of second-degree murder. They could have convicted him of first-degree murder, but they clearly weren't satisfied beyond a reasonable doubt that there had been enough planning or premeditation to rise to the level of first-degree murder. But they clearly had no difficulty convicting him of second-degree murder because they were satisfied there was an intent to kill or an intent to cause bodily harm and being reckless as to whether death ensued or not.
Prior to his sentence being handed down, Stang stood up in court and said he wished he could take it back. Tara's mother, Deb Dorr, spoke to reporters outside of court and made it clear she did not think Stang was sincere.
I mean, you say I'm sorry to people when you bump into them on the street. You don't say I'm sorry to their families after you hit them over the head with a hammer.
She said she felt Stang was sorry he got caught, but not sorry for the loss she had suffered. Tara's mom was also frustrated with the sentence. Stang had been sentenced to life in prison with no chance of parole for 18 years for Tara's murder. By then, he had already amassed a record of approximately 40 convictions. Stang was later investigated in relation to hammer attacks and robberies involving 2 cab drivers in 1999, though in the end, he was only convicted of 1 further count of robbery. In that case, a father of 4 had been driving a cab for a few weeks when he was hit repeatedly with a sledgehammer. Fortunately, he managed to escape, but he had suffered scalp lacerations and skull fractures, leaving him unable to work for years following the incident. Stang, meanwhile, stole the cab and got away with $83 in cash. He faced extra prison time for that robbery, but given the life sentence for murder, it was set to be served consecutively. However, having him behind bars didn't mean Tara's mother found peace. She said she felt the court process didn't provide the answers she was looking for and wanted to meet with Stang face to face.
I thought it was unfinished because I do believe that, not out of revenge or anything, they should have to face the victim's family.
So Deb decided she would visit Trevor Stang at Bowden Institution. The federal prison is located about an hour north of Calgary, and the tall barbed wire fencing and lookout towers can be seen from the highway. It has multiple security checkpoints, and Deb went through each of them to face her daughter's killer.
Because I was raised that prisons are country club settings and that they can get their education, and, I'd never had anything to do with the justice system. So to go in and go through the doors that slam automatically behind you and the security clearance, and then it was in a room half this size just across a table. They brought him in handcuffed and shackled, and he was absolutely terrified. And I think that might have given me the strength I wasn't going to buckle in front of him. He was crying and he apologized prophetically, and he kept asking me if I forgave him. And I says, no. I says, that's not up to me. I don't have to forgive you. It's not my place, He said Tara was his only victim he had ever left behind. And I says, but you had 40-some prior convictions, maybe not murder, but other victims. And he didn't see them as victims because they were alive.
26 years after Tara's death, Trevor Stang remains in prison, and Deb continues to attend his parole hearings. She even visited him for a second time in 2025.
He was just very quiet and reserved and said he'd served his sentence. And I says, yes, but your 25-year sentence is what they consider life, where I get the life sentence without my daughter. And he didn't say nothing to that. I really don't feel anything towards him. Like I say, I think I'm more angry I'm angry at him, and I always will be, but not to the point where it's going to eat me alive. I don't care if he forgets me, but I don't want him to ever forget what he did to her.
In the Parole Board of Canada's most recent publicly available decision, in 2023, the board stated that if released, Stang poses a high risk of reoffending. Though it noted he hasn't had a physical altercation with another inmate since 2020. The board said that while in custody, Stang has taken several programs, but that his motivation to change is inconsistent and that his gains are described as minimal. Stang was also involved in the opioid substitution therapy program and was reported to be stable on his current dosage. The board went on to say that he'll require a gradual release into the community to ensure public safety, noting he hasn't been accepted into halfway houses and he has no community support. At the time of this podcast's release, Stang had not been granted day or full parole. Tara's mother knows that while she would like him to stay behind bars forever, that's unlikely, and at some point, he will be back in the community. But over the years, she's also worked hard to try and prevent other late-night workers from suffering a similar fate. In the days following Tara's death, Deb and her other daughter started a petition, hoping to change legislation to prevent employees from having to work alone at night. Deb said, despite all those efforts, that never happened in Alberta.
It's frustrating because it doesn't matter where you are in Alberta or wherever. I hate to say it's going to happen again because there's so many desperate people out there. And there's young kids and adults that are being made to work alone because it's cheaper for the employer. And it costs too much to have two people and all these precautions, but it costs a lot to bury a child too.
Instead, she takes solace in visiting her daughter's final resting place at a cemetery not far from the home where Tara grew up in Lethbridge. Every time, she's reminded of the magnitude of what she's lost.
There's been lots of weddings and births. I'm lucky enough, I've got 10 grandchildren and 2 great-grandchildren. And I see what they missed out on because to me, all my kids were spectacular. But Tara fought for everything she had and excelled at everything and still never lost the compassion or the caring. Or she would help anyone. She would have given, I mean, if he demanded the money, she probably would have made him a sandwich to go with it.
I want to thank Deb for her help in sharing Tara's story. I also want to thank the victim of the ATM attack and his family, who I spoke to as I put this episode together. He's a very private person, and while he didn't want to do an interview, he was incredibly helpful and supportive. And it was incredible to learn all that he's overcome following the brutal attack. I also want to thank you for taking the time to listen. Crime Beat is written and produced by me, Nancy Hixt, with senior producer Dila Velasquez. Audio editing and sound design is by Rob Johnston. Special thanks to photographer-editor Danny Lantella for his work on this episode. And thanks to Chris Bassett, the VP of Network Content, Production and Distribution, and Editorial Standards for Global News. I would love to have you tell a friend about this podcast. There are 7 seasons of stories you can listen to and share. And please consider rating and reviewing Crime Beat on Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen. You can find me on Facebook at Nancy Hixt Crime Beat and on Instagram at nancy.hixt. That's nancy.hixt. Thanks again for listening. Please join me next time.